Welcome back to the Nirvana Principle Show. I'm Dr. Mallick, and today we're talking about money and behavior. The historian Yuval Noah Harari, who's an Israeli historian, you might know him by a book he wrote called Sapiens. So he thought that humans are unique because they can tell stories, they can have abstract concepts. He was talking more about religion and how we are the only species on the planet who you can convince of something that they've never seen, that is not tangible. He was talking more about how religions are propagated and why these concepts are so important. I think this concept can also be applied to money and how we can have that level of cognition, we can have that level of thinking where we can understand that a piece of paper holds a value which is not the value of the paper itself. So it's not how much fire you can burn with it. It has a certain denomination. It represents a mode of transaction. It's a way of accounting things. So I think that how we've evolved in the species, money began about like 3,000 years ago, according to some research.
Yeah.
And in that time, this is a recent development. Human beings have evolved from hunter-gatherers who hunt for, as you would imagine, probably a gazelle skipping around.
Yeah.
With a nice sharp spear, but now you're armed perhaps with a degree or some experience and a CV. And you're looking to provide for yourself and your family.
Definitely.
Instinctual drives as human beings are, like I mentioned before, to feed yourself nutrition and also to procreate. How does that relate to money?
Well, money has become so important in our lives, in the human race. Like earlier, I mentioned that no matter who you are or where you're from or what you believe in, at some point, you'll care about money and you care about your health. And the reason why is because money has taken center stage. It's become a tool to exist. To put this into perspective, someone you might all know is Abraham Maslow, the Russian American who wrote in the Psychology Review.
Russian American, that's new. I thought it was one or the other.
Apparently he's both.
Yeah, so he made, I'm sure maybe some of you guys have heard, he made a fancy pyramid or a triangle, and you go between what your needs are, your deficiency needs that you need to be fulfilled, to be human, to exist. And then beyond those basic four, you have another growth needs which allow you to transcend higher. So I think there are 8 total, Idris.
That's right. And if you think about it, Hassan, the deficiency needs that Abraham Maslow spoke about are things that you absolutely need to exist. Things like physiological needs. You need to be healthy. And if you think about it, most people who seek out a doctor do it because they're going through some kind of pain, either physical pain or psychological pain.
Yeah.
When you're in that situation, you would do whatever it takes to get yourself out of that situation. He spoke about our need for safety. We all want to be safe. We all want to sleep and wake up knowing that wherever we take as our shelter is a safe space. Abraham Maslow talked about other needs that you absolutely need to exist. Things like our need for food, our need for water,
Shelter.
our need for shelter. So those 4 main things are now interlinked with money, so much so that you have to think about money at some point in your life.
Okay, just to meet those basic, the base of the pyramid or the triangle.
Just to exist.
Okay, so money has been around, like we're talking about, relatively recent in our evolutionary history. When we are thinking about things like food or procreation, we have certain biological responses to it. and there's certain neurochemicals or neurotransmitters in our brain which reward us for achieving those things, and that's your basic drive. So although you need food to survive, but how does your brain know that you need food to survive?
Yeah.
So every time you eat, you have that nice burger with fries. And you have sex. So although sex in itself, as far as your brain is concerned, the desire there is pleasurable because that's your biological drive to procreate, to pass on your seed, your DNA. The neurochemical that's involved in those drives, the ones I mentioned, the pleasure hormone or pleasure neurotransmitter, is everyone's favorite, dopamine.
Dopamine is arguably the most important chemical in our brain. It's involved in motivation. And by the way, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs is based on motivation. When you're hungry, you're motivated naturally to go and look for something to eat. If you're cold, you're motivated naturally to look for something warm.
Yeah.
So dopamine is intertwined with motivation.
Okay.
It's also involved in our thoughts about pleasure, like you said. It's involved with the way we think, the way we plan. So you can imagine a hormone that's involved in motivation, thinking, planning.
Sounds like someone who's looking to make a fortune. So I can see that. So earning money, or let's say the drive to earn money, can easily be translated in the modern day to an instinctual drive.
Of course, especially in people who have not met their basic needs. So sometimes we are able to realize that the people who commit crime don't do so because of greed. Sometimes it's out of necessity.
Yeah. Okay. So we have like a picture of someone who's desperate to find shelter, food, or hopefully you don't
pay their medical bills.
Yeah.
Pay their medical bills, and this person needs money to do these things. And the instinctual drive, the very basic drive of motivation, their dopamine goes all the way up. And you do anything, whatever it takes, to make sure that you satisfy this basic needs.
Yeah, so if you give someone money, it involves the same response as when you give them an addictive drug. Dopamine is also released with cocaine, heroin. A lot of these addictive drugs, these pleasurable drugs, also release dopamine. If you give someone something nice to eat or drink, again dopamine is released. If you hand someone money, there's nothing going in your body.
No.
There's nothing which you are biologically responding to. It is completely abstract and in your mind.
Completely.
So if I were to give Idris a 20-pound note right now, he would have a nice dopamine spike.
Yeah.
Even though that piece of paper in itself does not provide anything physically to your body. No. It is the symbol, what it represents.
Yeah. And that dopamine spike that you speak of, it will depend largely on how much I needed that 20 pound, the anticipation. If I hadn't eaten that day, Hassan, and you gave me a 20 pound note, the amount of dopamine that will come in my brain from that kind gesture will be different from if, I'd had 3 square meals that day, I'd paid my rent, I had heating in my house. So, money and dopamine are significantly intertwined.
There have been studies where they've also seen our more evolved responses to money in different ways. It's kind of painful, or it makes you cringe a bit if you see money being destroyed. There was this study where they gave the participants some chocolate, and they said, "Okay, buddy, lady, have some chocolate, and how long was it pleasurable for you?" And they said, "Okay, let's say 45 seconds, 40 seconds." Then they gave them the chocolate again, and this time they made them watch a video of someone tearing up money, and they said, how long did the pleasure last? It reduced substantially. down to like maybe 30 seconds, 25 seconds.
Yeah.
Again, even though you have something physical which is giving you dopamine,
Yeah.
simply seeing that valuable thing being destroyed on an abstract level reduces your pleasure.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if you're told something is expensive, it tastes better.
That's the media. That is definitely the media.
But it's also perception and how we perceive things, whether it's our own, whether it's how we grew up and our own personality, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
or whether it is something which is quote unquote indoctrinated in us that we should like this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even works with pain. So they did another study. I feel like I'm quoting a lot of studies today, but so there was a branded ibuprofen that's like what we call an analgesic or painkiller.
Yeah.
And so if you give someone a branded version, I'm not going to say the brand, but it's more expensive, it looks nicer, it's flashier, it costs more, is the exact same thing as that generic thing that you might buy. But because it's perceived and it does cost more, people report that the headache or the pain-killing properties of that is increased.
Yeah. Again, I think that's really the work of the media. Placebo effects. You know, when you're made to feel like something is more important because it's more expensive without hard facts. And keep in mind, we prefer stories to facts.
Yeah.
When someone tells us a story about how something is better, and because it's better, it's more expensive, automatically, we're going to think the one that's cheaper is less effective. People like to go to expensive restaurants to get food. And that food may not necessarily be better food.
Yeah.
But because it's more expensive.
Yeah, so you're more likely to eat less and be satisfied with less if you're paying more for it. So I'm not suggesting that you just pay exorbitant amounts so that you eat less. But generally, if you are paying more for food, you go to a fancy restaurant, the food might well be good, but because it's a fancy restaurant and you're paying more, biologically, psychologically, you will enjoy it. You will derive more pleasure from it simply on that basis.
Isn't it crazy how our mind works? How complex we are?
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why we chose this as part of our life, and we both thought that being a psychiatrist would be a good idea.
It's a great idea.
We talked about the biology of money basically and how it's evolved with our responses.
Yeah.
And we talked about why we have these instinctive drives as human beings, are very basic animals, and how that's come to be incorporated with money.
Yeah.
We dodged the conspiracy theory bullet.
You want to put me in trouble, bro, on the radio. You want me to say something on the radio? No.
Yeah, I mean, you're here to share your story.
Yeah. The answer to that question, I reckon, is it depends. It depends on quite a number of things. The first thing is, have your basic needs as a human being been met? Again, bringing it back to Abraham Maslow.
Okay.
If you've not eaten and then you get enough money to buy food, money has brought you happiness. And I think to paint the picture on whether money can buy you happiness, let me tell you a story. I'm from a place called Lagos, Nigeria. A lot of you probably have heard of Nigeria.
Lagos. Yeah.
And in Lagos, Nigeria, healthcare is expensive. You know, there's no free healthcare like you have in the UK. And as a result of that, money has a significantly higher effect on a person's sense of well-being compared to someone who has access to free healthcare, you know? So if, say, I'm struggling with a kind of illness and I was in Lagos, Nigeria, what I'll need to do is figure out a way to make money so I can get cured of my illness. And in that regard, if I didn't have money and somehow I came into more money, money has brought me happiness.
Okay, so you're saying it's situational?
It is situational, as opposed to someone who's in the UK who has access to free healthcare anyway.
Yeah.
The effect of money may be less.
Okay. Yeah.
Because one of their basic needs as a human being is free.
All right. So you're happy and healthy? Is that it? Yeah.
I am happy and healthy, and
you've come to the UK, and your certain restraints on your money are not there. Certain expenses basically are not there.
Yeah.
Your you do not have the fear that just because you have, or the anxiety that just because you don't have a certain number in your account, you or a loved one might suffer as a result of that.
Yeah, and my partner is actually American, and sometimes we have this conversation about the differences in the UK and America. And in America, it's possible that for the job you're doing in the UK, you'd probably earn more money, but you also have to pay for healthcare. Whereas in the UK, you may not earn as much as you'd earn. I mean, we're doctors. We know the differences in how much our colleagues in the US are earning versus how much we're earning. I have mates that work in the US, and they make sure that I'm very...
Well, you peasant.
They make sure that I'm aware that I'm not earning as much as them, But I think a good price to earn less is to have access to free healthcare, because it's not just for when you're ill. It's the times between wellness, knowing at the back of your mind that, like you say, if I become unwell, I know that I'll be all right eventually.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that that money can provide you happiness depending on what's deficient. And if those deficiencies are already being met, then perhaps the money in itself may not provide that sense of security or contentment that it should.
That it should, yeah.
You were speaking about being someone who isn't from the UK originally.
Yeah.
Myself, I've been in the UK about 3 years. I came here to work as a doctor.
Right.
The pay rise was substantial, I'm happy to say. Yet, once the first 6 months, and where I was earning the most I have in my whole life until that point in time, that was probably a more difficult time for me than any other time as well. Although there was money in the bank, and I'm like, okay, I'm being rewarded for my services. I've worked hard to get here. Yet I have no friends. I don't have a social life. There's less to do beyond work, and beyond earning money, I'm not really doing anything with my life. I wasn't DJing. I wasn't doing any projects like I am now.
Yeah.
So I feel that I can agree that once your needs are met, it doesn't necessarily mean that just having more money or having more numbers to see in your bank account will objectively make you feel better.
Yeah, I mean, there was one time you were talking to me about that study by this gerontologist. I forget right now.
So yeah, that's a good memory. So there's this book by Mr. Carl Pillimer.
Yeah, that's the one.
And he wrote a book called 30 Lessons for Living. And he specializes in aging and how that changes our life, our cognition, the way we think. He interviewed thousands of Americans, and he asked all of them that, okay, what important life lessons have we learned from all of your time being alive?
Yeah, what did they say again?
Not a single one. Not one said that to be happy you should try to make more money. Not one said that it's important to be as wealthy as someone you know. Not a single person said you should choose your work based on how much you think it'll make you earn in the future.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Because there's a whole lot of people who think that the more money you have, the happier you're going to be. And who better to ask if that is true than people who've existed for so many decades of their lives. You know? And when you think about it, people who have done studies on what makes us happy, a lot of them speak about things such as, the relationships we have, doing a meaningful job, having time to spend with your partner. And I'm sure if you read that book by that gentleman who's a gerontologist, there'll be similar themes in there that, it's the experiences that we have. It's the memories that we have. And to be fair, some of our memories are facilitated by money. But to think in such concrete terms that money equates happiness is not seeing the full picture, is it?
There's a gentleman called Easterlin,
Right.
and he has a paradox named after him. It's called the Easterlin paradox.
Yo,
which
that's
is-
goals, man. I
Yeah.
really, really want a paradox to be named after me as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool album name too, Easterlin Paradox,
Yeah,
featuring Jinadu.
Good to go.
So he made a generalization based on how much money you earn and how happy you are, and it was multinational.
Yeah.
And the findings or his theory was that you earn the more you earn, the happier you get, up to a point.
Okay.
It's not a linear graph. It's not directly proportional. That 10,000, I'm okay. 20,000, I feel better. 50,000, I'm happy. 1 million, oh my God, ecstasy. No, it's it plateaus off. And there are different studies who put in a number. Some say that it's like $50,000 a year. Some say 75.
Yeah.
So again, this is a generalization.
Yeah.
But this individual was not a psychologist or was not a sociologist. Yet they did try to quantify it. They try to quantify, is there a magic number that you should ask next time you're in a job interview? It's like, okay, I want 75K because I've heard that's the magic number. That's what makes me happy.
If only we were that simple.
Yes.
If only human beings were that simple. No, I do agree that after a certain point, and I keep bringing it to our hierarchy of needs, after a certain point, when your basic needs have been met, it is possible. I mean, if you've got food, 3 square meals a day, you've got a house where you can either pay your rent or pay your mortgage, or maybe you're even lucky enough to have bought out your house. You live in a safe neighborhood where you're not scared that you're going to get robbed. And you're reasonably healthy. Your basic needs have been met. It is possible that at that point, you earning more money doesn't make you more happy. So I do agree with that study. However, I don't agree with putting a number on the amount of money that makes one individual happy and another individual unhappy.
What should you spend money on, or what can money not buy?
Well, one of the things we've already established is that to an extent, money can't buy happiness. Money can buy you resilience.
Yeah, what do you mean, resilience?
What I mean is, we live in a world that is uncontrollable. The only thing we have control over is ourselves. There's a Time magazine article where they tried to talk about the link between resilience and happiness, and it found that the more resilient you are, the happier you are. When life throws its numerous problems at you, you have, for example, maybe you're driving a car and you get a flat tire, or your car has a problem. The amount of money you have available to you can dictate how much that situation affects you.
Yeah. Mr. Campbell wrote a book in 1981 called The Sense of Well-Being in America. And his solution for happiness was simple. He said, having a strong sense of controlling one's life is a more dependable predictor of positive feelings, of well-being, than any of the objective conditions of life.
I don't know who that is, but that is a legend, because I wholly agree with that.
To put it maybe oversimplified, then the objective or materialistic things that you can get. Perhaps a bigger screen TV is not the answer to life's problems.
No, it's not about the amount of money or the things you can do with money. Once you've gotten to that point, it's about, like you say, control over your life.
Independence, freedom, all the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
Elizabeth Dunn, well-regarded researcher, she said that you should spend money on experiences, not products. You were mentioning being able to go on holiday.
Yeah.
And how dopamine, part of it is also the anticipation of it.
Exactly.
So let's say you've booked your holiday. Everyone knows that as soon as you get closer to the date, you just get more excited. So you enjoy the build-up.
Yeah.
So what Miss Dunn suggests is that is what you should spend money on. You should spend it on, sounds like cliche advice, but sounds better if someone's researched it, that you should spend it on experiences, not objects or not products.
Yeah. I mean, it's true that some products lead to experiences, you know. For example, what's going on right now, it wouldn't be able to happen if we didn't get some products. But these products, such as this mic and this Rodecaster Pro and your laptop and all this stuff we're using to make this happen, is creating an experience that I'm going to remember for some time. It's creating a memory. So it's true that we should chase experiences, but it's also true that some of those experiences that we chase are linked to things.
Yeah, I think perhaps what the word I used before was product. Money can also be a tool. It is a means of achieving things, a means of making things easier.
Yeah.
We can't project our voice over the airwaves. Wish I could. But we can buy certain tools which allow us to express ourselves, move from the bottom half to the top half of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Into the good stuff at the top is self-actualization.
Enjoyment.
We've talked about money and happiness.
Yeah.
How certain behavior can lead to contentment, can lead to resilience.
Yeah.
Is there a magic number? There's so much information around the internet, around the world, Idris, about how to improve your finances.
There's loads, mate. There's loads.
There's a bunch of professional stock analysts, whether they are someone who has a YouTube channel or someone who is, who has a degree.
Yeah.
How much can they really predict? How much can they really bring about lasting change that will give us the contentment and happiness and security that we seek from money?
You said a whole lot of things that beg the question, why isn't everyone rich? We've got all this knowledge. We've got all these stock analysts and all these people telling us what to do with our money based on data and all these things. So why isn't everyone rich? And, let me tell you a bit about stock analysts. These guys, they sit in their office, they wear suits, drink tea, and they say all these fancy things like, oh, you should put 10% of your money here and 10% of your money here,
My mom says that. She's like, then save 10% or whatever.
I'm sorry, is your mom a stock analyst, bro? No, okay. I don't really like stock analysts.
Okay.
They tell you to invest. None of them predicted COVID. No single stock analyst in this world. No one. We live in a world where you have to be humble enough to realize that while you can control yourself, you cannot control the world around you.
Yeah, so that sounds a bit like something which we study about called the cognitive triad.
Exactly.
It's called Beck's cognitive triad. It's by Aaron Beck, who's a very celebrated figure in psychology and psychiatry.
Yeah.
So there's a triangle, and the triangle consists of pretty much what we are talking about. It consists of the future, which we cannot predict.
Yeah.
It consists of the world around us, which, let's face it, we don't have much control over.
Nope.
And the third and final, and perhaps most important aspect of this is self. So if it's a connected triangle, to break that cycle, to bring about change, to change how we perceive things and hence change how we feel about them.
Yeah.
the only real thing you and I or anyone listening can control or change is
themselves.
themselves.
That's the one thing you have control over. I'm a fan of the Stoics, and the reason why I'm a fan of the Stoics is that they're all about action, not just back and forth debate. So, Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius, who is Stoic, he said we should discipline ourselves in small things, and from these progress to things of greater value.
So, how that relates to money would be that discipline is what separates the men from the boys?
Of course, discipline is what separates people that are happy with their money and people that are not. Well, one of the things. Let me say this a different way. For you to be physically fit, there has to be some degree of consistency in there.
Okay, no 4 hours once a week.
No, and it's been established. I mean, you can check loads of research that have been done. That you're better off doing little bits of exercise consistently than doing large amounts of exercise at once or inconsistently.
So it's better to save money of a fixed, consistent amount.
Of course. And by the way, I was just talking about exercise right now. If you don't do any exercise, for the love of God, please get up and do something. Walk around your house, walk around the block. Just do something and do it consistently. Then you build from there. It's been shown that you're better off starting that way than trying to pay for a gym membership that you're not going to stick to. Do something small, do something consistently. And that is the approach I reckon to take with money as well. You know, we hear people telling you to save money, and their approach is all wrong. They tell you to save certain amounts of money, when the approach should be the way a Stoic would look at it. Your own self, your own behavior, your discipline, and you build off on that consistency, build off on that ability to set a goal and stick to it, whether or not it's pleasant to stick to, because you're able to delay your gratification.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that being rich is a habit.
Yeah. And, you know, we've been talking about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs for huge proportions of this show.
Yeah, so we talked about like part of it being needs that are born of deficiency or the basics, like we were saying. And then there's growth needs.
Yeah.
So you are healthy, you have some money in the bank.
Yeah.
Okay. Where does this pyramid go? How do you reach the zenith? How do you reach the peak? What do you do once you reach there?
So when you've reached that point where everything is sorted out, you're happy. And by happy, I don't mean elated or euphoric. You know, I mean content.
Okay, so more serotonin rather than dopamine.
Yeah, you know, you're content with where you are and what you're doing.
Yeah.
The next step to reaching transcendence, to reaching self-actualization, is to share that happiness, to involve yourself in volunteering, to involve yourself in charity. Because now what you're doing is you're not just happy, you're potentially taking away someone's psychological pain, or you're making them happy.
So once you have enough, you give to others?
You should give to others. And loads of studies would tell you that one of the most satisfying things you can do is volunteer. Do something for someone who cannot or will not pay you back for that thing you do for them.
There are studies that have shown that we are more likely to spend money on loved ones. We find happiness in giving charity.
Yeah.
A study by the Americans.
I just wondered if that's why men tend to spend all their money on women. Yeah.
Women are more likely to be generous.
Oh.
I'm not sure, but if you're a lady and want to maybe buy some nice psychiatrist some lunch for dinner, we would be more than happy. But good on you. Okay.
Yeah. That's quite interesting, isn't it? It's quite interesting. Yeah.
So they gave participants in this study either £5 either $5 or $20.
Yeah.
And they had to spend that money the same day by 5 the same day.
Yeah.
Some of the participants were the task was to spend the money on themselves.
Okay.
And for the other half was to spend money on someone else. So people who spent money on themselves, they bought like food, they bought some trinkets for themselves. Those who spent it on others, bought them like maybe a toy for a kid or something like that.
Yeah.
They then checked their mood. They checked it, through a questionnaire or scale. How did they rate their mood? So they found that those who had spent the money, it was still free money. You're still happy. You're still getting that dopamine spike from the bill someone handed it to you, and you're spending it as well. But those who spent it on others were reported feeling much better, much happier, much better in mood.
Of course they did. It's basic human nature. I think it goes really deep to the fact that at the end of the day, we're all connected anyway. We all share one consciousness. Anyway, I'm worried of making this too deep.
Next podcast, we go into the state of consciousness and cosmos.
Yeah.
We do have some cool stuff coming up as well, though. Okay, so we've talked about the cognitive triad and how we are the only thing that we can change.
Yeah.
We borrowed a page from the Stoics and we realized that discipline begins with ourselves.
Of course.
And small changes lead to big changes.
Like I just said, if you're disciplined with your money, you're going to find it easier to find the behavior, to find the consistency, to find the control required for you to be disciplined with your exercise.
Yeah, I agree on that, because we are in this show, and I guess as psychiatrists, we agree that it's the temptation is biologically the same.
Yeah.
The need for instant gratification remains, whether it's to avoid that kebab, whether it's to avoid splurging money when you shouldn't. It comes back to this being a drive, and you are addicted to instant gratification. You do want that dopamine hit, and it's human and it's natural.
Yeah.
However, consciously you can change that and you can enjoy the habit now.
Yeah. Yeah.
As adults, we can still retrain our brain. We can still change it. We can still...
That's the whole concept of psychotherapy, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the whole concept of psychotherapy. It all starts with the mind and retraining the mind. Think a different way, act a different way, be a different way. Or maybe you've already known all these things and this just reinforced your perspectives. Whatever it is, we're hoping is a positive perspective.
Yeah, and we're hoping you let us know. Did you find this episode useful? Did you enjoy our company? Were we annoying?
Maybe you, bro.
Whoa, okay. I see how this is going. End of the show and the real Idris starts coming out. No. I see how this is. No more use for me.
Yeah, let us know. Let's know what we can improve on,
Yeah, so you can find us on Twitter. It's at Nirvana Principle, as well as on Instagram with the same handle. That's Nirvana. And the principle is Principle. We would love to hear from you. This is a new project, and Melodic Distraction have been kind enough to support mental health and support these concepts. For the next episode, I'm happy to share that it's going to be on maternal mental health. Thank you very much, Idris, for coming on the show, sharing your thoughts, taking your time out.
It's been nice to be here, man.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I feel like I learned a lot today.
Same here.